I love you know, what you were saying before, this whole idea that you don't distinguish between science and religion is such a great idea. I mean, I love that concept because um, I'm very much, I don't understand a whole lot of what I read when I read about, you know, quantum entanglement and, you know,
Exactly.
subatomic particles and all these things.
I get
It's
lost too.
right, but it's just fascinating. And the idea that all this stuff is going on beneath what we call reality, the surface, like you said, this because really nothing is this is all, there's more space in between the particles than there is that it's solid, right?
Exactly.
And the fact that poems are made up of words, which are made up of letters, and they're made up of sounds, and how that all coalesces. You know what I'm saying? How that really, there's this sort of function of how the
Coalesces into
yes,
thingness.
right.
Yeah.
And I think there's on a certain level of what that's getting at, even if it's not a conscious thing that you're doing.
Uh-huh.
You know, just the idea that, you know, Schrodinger's cab, and it, you know, of course there's Schrodinger's cat.
Right.
So there's the playfulness of that, and that sort of, to me, it sort of reflects the whole idea on what's going on in the subatomic world as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's this duality, there's this whole interplay of ideas that could be particles or could
waves.
be or waves, right?
Yeah.
Because you know you
and
look
they're
at
both true at once.
exactly,
Yes.
and it's just it's a fabulous idea, and I know you do that. The whole book really goes back and forth with all of this sort of thing. Talk a little bit about the. I know you have some poems in that I remember that goes back to your childhood.
Uh-huh.
Is there something you could read out of that? And let's talk a little bit about. I think you're probably the same age as some of us here, born in the 50s, I take it,
Yeah,
right?
53.
Okay, well there you go. Read something about that goes back to your childhood that comes out of the book there.
I'll read this one.
Yeah.
The Present. This is one of the few free verse poems in the book. The Present. All of this, too, taking on the stilted look of childhood photographs. My brother and I on a couch, a small box unwrapped in his lap. Both of us gray, couch and carpet gray. The day beyond the open window gray, and its curtain pulled outside for the moment by a puff of wind. Hold up again, delighted, to the photographer, Mom or Dad. Your first watch hanging from your hand like a caught fish, its darting eye grown dull in a blink.
That's so good. You know, you use imagery in such a skillful way in that it's so nuanced. Your imagery is so under control.
Thank you.
Whereas if you look at my stuff where it's completely whacked out, you know, I mean, I just go overboard sometimes, or a lot of times. And I just love how you're able to use such great images and have them be subtle, soft-spoken, and be so powerful at the same time, and pack the meaning that it does.
Thank you.
And I've been a fan of your work for all these years. I've read a lot of. I think I had all your books at one point. I don't know if I still do, because there was a time in my life where I got rid of a lot of poetry books. But is this book different from the last, which is different from the last, or do you think there's a running thread in them that you're kind of going back to those, and just are these like sort of a build up from, on top of the other ones, kind of a thing where you're building to something, or is they're just completely separate?
That's a good question. The first book, I am very slow. First book came out in '92. The second book came out in 2006, and this came out in 2018.
Mm.
So I'm, what, 25 years old, 30, 92?
Yikes.
I'm, what is that?
Yeah.
Almost 30 years older
Sure.
than the first book. So I think that being an older person than I was
Right,
manifests itself more
right.
than any sort of, maybe thematically that comes up more. Though even when I was young, I always obsessed with aging,
Yes.
time,
Right.
etc. So all of that probably
Right.
runs through all the books. It's probably, now that I'm older, in this book even more so.
Yeah. When you finished the book, did you feel like, okay, I've said what I wanted to say and that's it, there's nothing more? Or is there some sort of afterglow or some sort of something else that might be coming out of these that goes on to the next book? It's sort of almost the same question I just asked you, but I'm just wondering whether once you finish a collection or you decide, well, that's the collection, or, you know, you're writing these poems and then, okay, so you put them in a collection, and then, you know, do you just stop writing and then work on the collection? Or because what happens or what could happen is if you try to do both, you write the next poem, you think, well, this ought to go in there as well.
In the one that
In the one that
it should have been in?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, so when you're finished with it in terms of, you haven't published it yet. Maybe you haven't even sent it out yet.
Yeah.
You're finished with the collection in terms of, okay, I've got it.
Right.
But do you stop writing to work on getting this out? Because with, you know, and because then if you keep writing, there's the idea or the possibility that you could think, you know what, this should go in there as well.
Absolutely.
And you can keep doing that.
Absolutely.
Right? How do you cut it off, you know?
When somebody finally takes the book.
All right, that's done.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good answer.
But it's true. I mean, this poem goes in and this
Right.
poem comes out.
Yeah.
And then, what was I thinking? This poem
Yeah.
goes back in and
Yeah,
that
right.
poem comes back out.
You know, we just had Maureen and Neil here, and I asked them this. How did you, in terms of ordering the poems in the book, how did you go about putting in what order that they appear?
I sweat blood when it. There's like, I probably went through. If there's, I don't know, there's 40 poems in the book,
Yeah.
and if you do the math on how many combinations,
You
know,
Sure.
it's 3 million,
Yeah,
300,000.
right.
I went nuts.
Yeah.
Just nuts.
Theme, how one thing leads off and this
exactly.
plays into the next.
But I wonder about that all the time because, and I'm guessing it's true for you guys and most everybody. Do you read a poetry book from front to end?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
But a lot of times I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I pick it up and I jump in.
Right.
And maybe after I'm familiar with it, but even then.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that matters.
Yeah.
And speaking of Don Justice, I asked him, twice to make sure over the years.
Yeah.
And both times he said, it doesn't matter. But I don't believe him because for two reasons. I think he must have had, I don't think he threw them up in the air and wherever they landed. Two, when you're Donald Justice, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because every poem's a gem.
Sure, right.
Though you know, if you listen to Sgt. Pepper, it seems perfect how it is. But is that because it was perfect or because we've heard it
That's
10
the way it's
million
been
times?
offered to us, and we're 50
Right.
years later, that's it. It's in stone now, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. And I you know, and I've read what editors say. Robert Frost says, if there's 24 poems in your book, the book itself should be the 25th poem.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
Right.
you know, that it
The
should
whole-
all cohere. But I don't know if it's
Right.
true.
Right.
Um,
But I
did try.
I was going to say you ended up in this order, and like you say, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. But in terms of throwing it up in the air, I guess that's an old way of saying something. Because the first time I heard that was Henry Logan. You remember Henry?
Sure.
Because I think he said that's how he did his book. I think he only had them one book out. I'm not sure. But he said that's how he ordered his poems, is he threw them up in the air and then he picked them up. Now, that was the first, it was back in the 80s, and I think that's the first time I ever heard somebody say that. So I took him seriously, because he could have just been saying it the way you just said it. I don't know. But it seems to me that's what he said he did. So I'm not sure whether he did or not, but I guess it doesn't matter. In any case, is there a favorite poem of yours in there? Is there something that sticks out to yourself that you think is one of the better ones, or you love all your babies the same, all your children are the same?
Yeah. That's a good question. I like, let me read this one, I guess. Are you asking me to
Yes,
read
yes,
it?
yes, yeah. I guess if I asked you tomorrow, you'd probably come up with a different poem, right?
Very well.
Right?
Yeah. Francis, Xanthus, and Mr. Ed.
I remember this.
Francis was a talking mule,
Right.
and Mr. Ed,
Sure.
we all remember, and Xanthus was Achilles' horse who was
Right.
given the power of
Just
speech.
speaking.
Yes. Francis, Xanthus, and Mr. Ed. Hearts larger than the apples they loved. What troughs and what sweet waters. Fleet-footed, fleet-minded. Their coats were light shaken through the wheat when the early sun skimmed their childhood farms. You who crave romance, whose fathers were confused or bought off by unforeseen and extenuating circumstance. The well of those mournful voices, balm of their timbres, gravelly gold and silver, where you rest at midday, a secret calm when your hands shook from too much thrill and bravado. Rest, Peter, rest. You have a place at the table. Set down, Achilles, at last, your intricate shield. And Wilbur, you are sore tired and deserving of peace. Your mothers loved you. They meant no harm. How, in the end, like rain upon your roofs, their whispers in your ears, their approaching hooves.